Hey Fly Tires, welcome back to AvidMax Tying Tuesday. Brady with you once more. Today we're going to tie an atomic stone. This is a great little stonefly nymph, a nice big stonefly nymph designed for salmon flies. It's a take off of the Kaufman stone. This one's developed by Brian Hudspeth, and he was looking to kind of enhance that Kaufman stone. So it's a great long-term stonefly nymph. And the aspects that he has added, I really enjoy. It's a fun one to tie, and it has really cool characteristics to it. So we'll get our hook locked in our vise. I already have my bead, as well as the teardrop body here. So starting with the Firehole bead, this is the matte tungsten. It's a pretty large bead for this size. I'm doing a size 8 today. So this is a size 3/16 or a 4.5 millimeter bead. The hook we're tying on is a 2220 from Daiichi. So it's technically a streamer hook, but streamer hooks in the right sizes and profiles work great for nymph hooks as well. It's a 4x long shank on here with a round bend. It's a 1x strong, so a nice stout wire with a down eye on this guy. And then, like I mentioned, this teardrop body from Firehole, which is a fairly new product. It's just a great way to add weight, helps build the taper, and avoids using lead. So for people that don't want to use lead, these tungsten teardrop bodies are a great development. And if you saw on the one that I tied to start here, I'm going to do things a little bit differently. I did some moose mane antenna, which is close to the material he uses on his pattern. I can't honestly tell you what he uses there. So if anybody knows, let us know. But I'm going to do Biots instead. We'll just do a Biot antenna, and then that'll match the tail as well. So to start out, we're going to start our thread in front of the bead. We're going to move that stuff back and out of the way. And we're going to do just a few quick locking wraps here with our thread. This is the UTC 140 in black. And then we'll do our antenna. So for this, it's going to be our Biots here. And I'm going to use a couple of these, pull them right off and prep them to tie in. And I'll tie in one at a time, right out the front. For these, I like to do about half the hook shank off the front end. And these will be on either side. So we'll do the first one, a couple wraps. That hook eye can help sort of splay it out nicely. You want the concave facing outward. And then we'll mirror that on the other side. So same thing, that concave facing outward so that they splay away from each other. We'll marry up the lengths there, and then we'll secure that one in place as well. And then once we tie our bead in, they'll help lock it. We'll do a few wraps rearward, clip out that excess, and then whip finish over the top of this to lock that all down. And then we can clip out our thread. I also like to throw a little bit of securing glue on this portion just because there's not a lot of thread holding everything together. So a little bit of glue for durability, and that'll also help keep everything in place once we shift on forward. So now that we got our antenna secured in place, I'm going to flip this guy over, and we're going to secure that teardrop body into place. It's going to move around on you if you don't. So we'll take some of this Solares. This is the thin hard. Use a lot of the thin hard. And I'm gonna hold that bead or that teardrop close to the shank and squirt a little bit of this down into the opening there. Fill it up. Let it sort of settle. Make sure it settles down, grabs onto the shank, and then we can hit it with our UV light, and that'll help keep it in place. If you had to move it for some reason, you could still. It's not glued, but that Solares is definitely going to hold it for the purpose that we need it to. So we'll cure that for a moment, and then we can get back to tying. So now that guy is not moving on us, helps to keep our bead in place as well. And then we can add our thread back on right behind that teardrop. So one of the additions that Brian made to this is the way that the wire is tied in, some underwire for this. I'm using some lead-free. So this is just the 0.25 lead-free wire. And this is to help with weight, but then also to build profile. So we're going to tie them in on either side of this hook. So I'm going to clip a couple of pieces to length here, just like so, and secure them on the sides. So we'll add the first one in here, holding it in place. Went a little long, so I'm going to clip that down. And then we'll do the same thing on the far side. It also helps with this teardrop body. You really have to work on this transition here. Once you get to this teardrop, you're going to be sliding off of it unless you build that taper up nicely. And so this helps with that as well. So we'll secure that all in place. Get them to the right length here. There we go. Right back to about the barb. And then that's where we're going to add our tails as well. And I'll come in sometimes and sort of pinch them flat, which is easier with lead. This stuff will cater to that just slightly as well. And then cover it up. Careful of the sharp edges here on the back as you're doing that. And there we are. So then the next material we're going to add, like we did on the front with the antenna, the back end, the tails, are going to be some Biots. Just a nice stiff material, stays in place nicely, and creates a great buggy looking fly. So these ones will marry up, again, concaves facing outward so that they splay away from each other there. And then we will tie those in together. You can do them one at a time. We'll do them together on this fly. Right about the length of that shank overall. So we'll hold that in place. Give it some quick securing wraps. There we are. And make sure that your length is good and they're positioned the way you want them. And then we can secure that on forward. And I always leave them in, again, just to help build up this profile and this taper overall before we get to that dubbing. And if you sneak in front of them one time, they'll splay outward for you so you can clip them off. And then we'll go on to our ribbing. This bug I'm going to use a little red to add some contrast. So this is some vinyl rib. This size I'm using the midge gauge in red. If you go bigger, you can go up to the nymph size. Depending on how big the stoneflies are, where you're fishing. Brian, I believe, is from the Pacific Northwest. They got some big bugs up there. And this was developed originally for the salmon flies. So nice big fly. It's a good lead fly in a lot of different nymph rigs. Whether you're fishing Euro or under an indicator, this fly can definitely help you get some flies down into the zone where those fish are feeding. So now we got our bodies, our profile, kind of under profile all built out. We got our ribbing in, we got our tail done, our antenna on there. We can start dubbing this fly now. And this takes some work. Just a lot of dubbing. I'm using just these. This is a Beaver dubbing in black. You can use the Kaufman's black if you wanted to be more true to that Kaufman stonefly, which gives a great look. But I really do like the Beaver dubbing. Just a nice natural option. Has a good mix of really, really fine fibers, but then offers a few real picky ones as well. So you get a nice buggy feel. And we'll start slow and just work our way to a nice thick stonefly. So I'll take quite a bit out because I'm going to end up using most of it. And we'll just keep dubbing our noodle as we go. I use a little bit of wax. I tend to put it on my fingers. You can put it on the thread if you'd like. Just helps dub that noodle up. Keeps things nice and tight. There we go, that's looking pretty good. So now I'll half hitch right at that location and we can bring our ribbing around. And we'll just rib it out a few times, counter ribbing it here on up. Adding segmentation, some durability, and a little bit of pop with this red as well. And then we can capture that off in place. And work on our thorax. Just maybe my favorite part of this fly is the thorax. Because we're going to use some turkey tail for the backing. And I just really like turkey tail. So to get prepped for that, I'm going to do one more dubbing noodle. Just need a prop, really, for the wing to stand up on. So this is kind of a nice bulbous dubbing noodle we're going to create, just adding to the taper. Like so, and then we can do our turkey there. So the turkey tail I have here, it's just a nice natural color. First thing I like to do to this is add some Zap-A-Gap to it. So I'm just going to kind of glue it together. I don't want it coming apart. This adds durability to the fly. So we're just going to brush on some Zap-A-Gap here and let that dry. Makes it a little easier to work with. and helps with consistency. Gives it a nice little shimmer as well. So we'll let that dry. Ten minutes later. All right, once it's nice and dry, we can clip some off for ourselves. And you don't need a whole lot, but I do take a good bit just because I'm going to square it out. So we'll take a little more than a pencil thickness, and then I will clip it square, and then size it appropriately here. And for this, I want it to be just a little bit bigger than the profile of the fly. So you can make one quick cut, and then you can still tear it off of there. And then we're going to shape it as well. So we're going to cut a little V into it. This material just really imitates that backing, that kind of casing that you see, the multi-tone casing that you see on these stoneflies. So we'll match it right up top, still a little bit big. I'm going to trim it one more time. Gives us that nice V that we can tie in right here on top. And I'm going to go back right over that bump so that the points are about halfway down, and then we'll secure that in. We'll do a loose wrap right over top, make sure it's where we want it, and then we can really snug into it and lock it into place. And then we're going to clip out the extra material here, and we'll try and use this same piece for the rest of the fly because we're going to do this 3 times. So that was the first time. We'll do some wraps. I'm going to do another W noodle to cover up some thread, create another dam of sorts, help this transition out, and then we'll tie in the gills. And this is one of the added aspects of this bug that Brian brought to enhance the look, and again, just one of my favorite little touches overall. So the gills, I'm going to use some sparkle emerger yarn. This is the clear white color, and this is about a half of the hank. So the sparkle emerger yarn comes on a hank. Usually I'll split them in half, and then we'll tie that thickness in on either side. So I clip it square, mostly square, can be a little straggly, and we'll tie it in on either side. So just sticking out over that dubbing. Not too much material, a little bit shorter than that backing material that we put in. And we'll do the same thing on both sides. If you look closely at these stoneflies, the mature ones anyways, they have these gills on there, so it gives a very realistic look. Adds a little attractant as well. And if you're tying these in and you're not sure of the length, definitely err on the long side because you can just trim them back. So we'll cut that extra out, and then in true form, add a little more dubbing, and we will repeat that process. So we'll do a nice thick dubbing noodle again, right on top of all of that, creating uniformity to this pattern. And then we'll do another turkey back. Same way, clip out a little V. And secure it on top. We're just sort of working our way forward. So this one we're going to bring just in front of where that other one lands. And we'll secure that down. Again, nice and snug. And clip out the extra. And then add another dubbing noodle. And this time we are going to add some legs sort of at this halfway point. And always just kind of checking underneath and around to make sure that you're covering everything up. It's nice and uniform throughout and laying the way that you want it to here. Okay, so those leg time. For this one, I like a round rubber leg. You can do a variety of things, some nymph legs. I think this round rubber leg just creates a lot of movement. It's a good style, matches this pattern nicely. So we'll do one really past the length of the body, halfway down the tail, nice long legs. And we'll mirror that on the front. And then do the same thing on the opposite side here. Sneak down and under to secure that in place. And again, if you go long, you'll trim these anyways. Just getting them in there and clipping them out. Some more dubbing. I like to come up underneath them one time as well. Keeps them from laying too flat. We want them out, making movement in the water. And then we're gonna add some more gills here. Second set of gills right underneath. And we're gonna tie right over these legs as we work forward. So you don't have to worry about moving those out of the way. Do the same thing again on the opposite side. Secure another set of gills here. Rotary definitely makes this process a lot smoother. You can see what's going on both sides there. One more dubbing noodle here, and then we will do our final turkey back on top before we go up and dub right up to the front. It's a very forgiving fly to fish. I feel like I'll fish this year round too. It's going to be most productive in the summer months when you have a lot of activity with stoneflies. They're not burrowed down. But what fish wouldn't take advantage of a nice big meal if presented in the right opportunity? So we got our last piece of turkey here. Position that right on top. Couple of wraps. Locking that in place. And then we can clip out that extra. We don't need to save this anymore because that's our last backing material. All we're going to do from here is dub out a nice thick collar and finish it off nice and secure. So it does take a little bit of effort to go through and fully build out this fly. The amount of fish that I have caught on it have definitely made it worth the time at the bench for me. I whip a bunch of these up every year and pull a lot of fish out of the depths. I love to eat it. With our dubbing collar here at the end. Again, just sort of checking the underside and over. Working those legs right up to front where the bead is. And then that last turn of dubbing I'm going to do in front of the legs, and that'll help sort of pull them outward again, away. And then we'll sneak a whip finish down underneath there. So we'll get everything prepared here. Pull the legs back out of the way and whip finish behind the bead, like so. So that's the atomic stone. Great little fly. This bug has put a lot of fish in the net for me. Takes a lot of tie, but the time at the bench is definitely worth it when you get a fly that's as elegant and fishes as well as this one does.